Alright everyone, welcome back to another HAES video. Today we are looking at lessons from the Fatosphere, quit dieting, and declare a truce with your body. Now thankfully this one does have an introduction, so we're gonna just jump right into it, I think. Did you ever notice that the very same magazines that tell you each and every month how to lose weight, burn more calories, fight the flab, not to mention how to do your own smoky eye makeup, fix your hair like a celebrity, and engage in complicated pubic hair topiary, will turn right around and tell you to love your body, and then, adding insult to injury, tell you that confidence is the sexiest thing in the world. And did you ever just want to light every one of those magazines on fire? We're right there with you. How on earth are you supposed to love your body when you're constantly told it's too fat, too hairy, too wrinkly, too zitty, too musky, too short, too tall, too boyish, too curvy, too sweaty, too unhealthy, too mortal, too human? Oh sure, there are people who claim they'll show you how. You are a goddess, they'll tell you. Light some candles and take a bubble bath and meditate on your inner womanly light, which is just swell if phrases like inner womanly light don't make you dry heave. Not so for us. Even better are the daily affirmation folks. Look in the mirror and say one nice thing about your body. Give yourself a hug. What the hell? Isn't the problem here that you don't like your body? Do you usually go around complimenting and hugging people you don't even like? Alright, so just a couple of things real quick. One, the fashion and makeup industry are at direct conflict for, have confidence. They'll meld together as this kind of having your cake and eating it too, where their primary goal is to sell you a product. And that have confidence in yourself is usually to sell a product, because it is an industry. It is the fashion and the makeup industry. That's just how it works. If you don't like it, stop reading those magazines. And, I mean, there is some validity to this for, teenage girls, because there's such a focus on being accepted and viewed as pretty and stuff when you're a young girl. But as an adult woman, you kind of have to just look at those magazines and stuff for what they are, which is a gigantic marketing campaign for you to buy products, because it's an industry. For the daily affirmation people, I don't think it's right to shit on them, because that seems what they're doing here. Everything works for different people. I'm not a daily affirmation person either. I don't think that works. It makes me cringe at myself. I don't like it. There is something to be said for being neutral towards yourself, which is what I've been able to get to. Because self-love isn't easy for everyone, and I don't think it's right to just blame outward things 100% of the time. Because I think no matter what, the world could be perfect, and yet every human being is still an imperfect person, including yourself. So I think to completely equate a lack of self-love for everything external to you is short-sighted and lacking insight into the main issues. Not to say that some of the outward stuff doesn't contribute, but a lot of the work has to be done internally. Learning to love your body is a long, slow process, and we mean a long, slow process. You can't just call a truce with your body out of nowhere. You need to engage in some hardcore peace talks first. And there's gonna be resistance. Intellectually, you might realize that everything in this book makes a lot of sense, and you really should quit hating your body post-haste. But emotionally, you'll still be so accustomed to those negative feelings about your appearance, you'll have no idea how to let go of them right away. Believe us, we know how it feels. In Chapter 22, we'll talk about the books that made us realize it was possible to be fat, healthy, and happy simultaneously. And we fervently hope this book will do the same for you. But we both had long, slow journeys. Did we mention the long and slow part between reading those books and truly coming to like our bodies the way they are? Chances are you and your body have been at odds for a long time. You don't just end a decades-long feud by saying, well, that was silly, let's drop it now. Not even if it was silly, which hating your body really is. When you're used to your body being the enemy, the stubborn foe that stands in the way of you being your best, that is thin, self, it's really hard to start thinking kindly about it. Really hard. So to be brutally honest, we're not even going to try to tell you how to love your body. For now, we're going to tell you how to achieve, I'm not sure what this is, with your body. We're just going to get you as far as a ceasefire. The good news is, in this culture, that's actually pretty freaking far. So the thing with this is, like, you can love your body where it is and still want it to be better. And I feel like this is trying to say that if you love your body the way it is, you won't want to change anything. The whole fat acceptance movement seems very anti-growth, and I think I'm realizing that's like my biggest core issue, that and the whole oppression thing that they do and equating it with actual forms of oppression. Anti-growth nature of the fat acceptance movement just feels like it is setting up for, like, in 10 years it's gonna be the new brand of Karen. Like, we need a fat acceptance, a separate name for, like, the fat acceptance Karen. And I don't think Marissa works. So we need to come up with a name for the fat acceptance Karen. Yeah, I called you fat. Both of your devoted authors here are fat. Yeah, we said it, fat. We can't stand the word overweight because the implication that there is a single objectively correct weight for every human body. No, that's not what that means. Overweight means it's a BMI term, which I know you don't like, but it means over a range of healthy weight. It means over that range. And even being overweight is a range before you get to obese, which is also a range. Everything is a range. There is no single weight for any of those categories. I hate that argument so fucking much. It's so irritating. There ain't. The body mass index, the measure used to file people into categories of underweight, normal, overweight, and obese, is limited in its usefulness, to put it mildly. That's why it's often done in conjunction with other tests and other metrics of health. Based on a ratio of height to weight, it doesn't take into account a host of other important factors like age, gender, frame size, and muscle tone. And although we know some fine fatties who, because they just can't bring themselves to use the fat word, or the F word, would describe themselves as big, beautiful women, or people of size, or indeed as overweight. We are not those fatties. We are fat, just as we are both fairly short, both have curly hair, Marianne much more than Kate, and both wear glasses some of the time. As far as we're concerned, the word fat has no more moral value than the other descriptions. It just is what it is. We are well aware that in many people's mind, fat not only means having an above average amount of adipose tissue, but a whole ton of other things that actually have nothing to do with said tissue. Fat can stand in for any and all of the following adjectives: disgusting, lazy, ignorant, smelly, unattractive, unhealthy, undisciplined, gluttonous, rude, sedentary, stupid. It's no wonder so many fat people themselves avoid it, or that children are taught to believe calling someone fat is cruel. It is cruel, if you mean it as an insult loaded with all of those other connotations. But fortunately or unfortunately, fat is also the single most efficient description of bodies that aren't, thin. And we are nothing if not word nerds. We prize simplicity and accuracy. We eschew ambiguous euphemisms. We will fucking cut anyone who calls us fluffy. But there are fat people that refer to themselves as fluffy. Like, I don't know, this seems a little gatekeepy to me. Am I wrong? It seems a little bit gatekeepy. Kate, at 5'2" and about 200 pounds and wearing a size 16 or 18, is clinically obese, madly in love with Lane Bryant's right fit jeans, and the founder of Kate Harding's Shapely Prose, one of the most popular fat acceptance blogs on the internet. So I guess if we read this book, we could also take a look at her blog. And yet she is frequently accused of not being fat enough to speak for fat people. Lissai. Bringing the fatty fat cred and a whole lot more than is Marianne, aka The Rotund, another website we could check out, standing 5'4" on her tippy toes, weighing about 315 and rocking size 28 or 30. Kate grew up as the thinnest kid in a fat family. Marianne, an adoptee, as the fat kid in a thin family. Between them, they can barely count how many diets they've been on, and they've lost enough weight to make up a whole nother person. A whole other fat person. But like virtually everyone who undertakes a weight loss program, and yes, that includes permanent lifestyle changes, we'll get into that later, they always gained it back. That is a misrepresentation. That is a major misrepresentation. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like, not everyone gains the weight back. And even if they gain some weight back, not everyone gains all of the weight back. And the permanent lifestyle changes, if they gain the weight back, chances are those didn't become permanent lifestyle changes. Like, bitch, what? And I find it interesting, though, that they clearly don't like the, small fats should stay in their own lane and not talk over larger bodies, because they seem to be very in favor of Kate, who's a size 16 or 18, which is only slightly bigger than myself. So that's interesting. My guess is that this was before that whole argument of small fats should know. Oh yeah, this was over 10 years ago. So this was before that whole small fats should know their place rhetoric. Well, not completely, because there is that not fat enough to speak, but I don't think that was a popular opinion yet, as much as it has become a popular opinion. So very interesting. Eventually, though, we both did something even less typical than losing lots of weight on a commercial diet program and keeping it off. We gave up dieting and learned to love our fat bodies. We learned to enjoy several kinds of exercise: walking, yoga, swimming, belly dancing, water aerobics, cycling, because they were fun and made us feel better mentally and physically, as opposed to serving as a painful, dreadful punishment for fatness, along with a big scoop of self-loathing. We learned to eat intuitively, which we'll tell you lots more about in Chapter 4. We learned to stop seeing disgusting, lazy, ignorant, smelly, unattractive, unhealthy, undisciplined, gluttonous, rude, sedentary, stupid women every time we looked in the mirror, and instead to see ourselves as what we really were: fat. And I gotta be honest, I don't necessarily equate, sure, a lot of people equate fat with a lot of these. I don't. I do. Okay, unhealthy does tend to be that disgusting, lazy, ignorant, smelly, unattractive, maybe a little bit of undisciplined. I do equate with that, but gluttonous, rude, sedentary, and stupid. Well, sedentary is also. Okay, so granted, I do equate fat with 3 of these. Unhealthy, slightly undisciplined, slightly. Like, not, that's not a complete, because I think a good portion of the issue with obesity in America is because people have to sit at desks for their job a lot of the time. People are overworked and underpaid, and so it's hard to get time to, especially if they have kids or something, to work out a healthy lifestyle. There are people that are just undisciplined, but I don't know if I would equate that with every single fat person. Sedentary, though, I do equate with fatness, because I think if someone's like super active, they're not going to be fat. I don't think that that's necessarily a morality thing. I don't think unhealthy or sedentary are morality terms. I think those are just descriptors, which I find interesting that they clearly equate with a level of morality, even though saying that someone's unhealthy as a moral failing, like there's that whole ableist argument. The big difference between calling someone unhealthy because they're fat and then calling someone unhealthy because they're disabled is that a disabled person can't control their struggling health, but fat people can have direct impacts on their health by losing weight. Just fat, not morally bankrupt, not pathetic, not unlovable, just freaking fat and vertically challenged and curly-haired and intermittently bespectacled, and, if we do say so ourselves, pretty damn cute. Our bodies did not mean our deaths would be attended only by a dozen cats. Our bodies did not mean we didn't deserve top-notch respectful healthcare. Our bodies did not mean we were incompetent employees. Our bodies did not mean anything. They just were. Fatness absolutely does not need to stand in the way of us living our lives with joy, pride, brio, and plenty of healthy self-respect. Unfortunately, we live in a culture that often insists it must. As our friend Melissa McEwan of the blog Shakesville put it, it remains a radical act to be fat and happy in America, especially if you're a woman, for whom jolly fatness isn't an option. If you're fat, you're not only meant to be unhappy, but deeply ashamed of yourself, projecting at all times an apologetic nature, indicative of your everlasting remorse for having wrought your monstrous self upon the world. That is some very dramatic language. You are certainly not meant to be bold or assertive or confident, and should you manage to overcome the constant drumbeat of messages that you are ugly and unsexy and have earned equally society's disdain and your own self-hatred, should you forget your place and walk into the world one day with your head held high, you are to be reminded by the cow calls and contemptuous looks of perfect strangers that you are not supposed to have self-esteem. You don't deserve it, because publicly fat and happy is hard. Being publicly, shamelessly, unshakably fat and happy is an act of both will and bravery. I mean, my God, they really love to position themselves as these crusaders of fatness, and it's just like, I'm not denying that they get some harassment for being fat, because I do think that that does happen, but I don't think that it's an everyday, every time they step a foot out of their house sort of thing, the way it's being presented here. I don't think it's like an everyday, every moment sort of thing. And I don't have a problem if someone is fat and happy. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of American society has become, granted, this is over 10 years ago, so maybe that's part of the issue, but I think a lot of people, especially recently, are just fucking exhausted with life at the moment. We've been through a pandemic. I think everyone's very much like, I don't care right now. But this was 10 years ago, so perhaps I'll give it some breathing room there. In the following chapters, we'll encourage you to rethink the relationship between fat and health. Question media reports on the obesity crisis, booga booga booga. Find a form of exercise you love. Listen to what your body tells you to eat. Stop listening to those conflicted women's magazines. Read up on the body acceptance movement. Find fabulous clothes that you can wear now instead of 10 pounds from now. Tell your mother to put a sock in it. And finally, once and for all, accept that diets don't cause permanent weight loss. Fad diets don't, but like healthy diets that just kind of become habit do. What we're offering here is essentially a guide to all the baby steps we took on our long, slow journeys toward being publicly, shamelessly, unshakably fat and happy. The will and bravery to get there are up to you, dear reader, but we can tell you about some tricks that might just come in handy. So, this one is very much a Fat Crusader sort of book that I can see. I still don't think... It seems to be more about fat people finding comfort in themselves, so it may not be a very interesting book to read, but I would be curious to see how much some of what they said can be adapted, or maybe even outright decent advice, just targeted towards the wrong audience. But this will be an option for the HAES reading nominees. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time.